We're all ready to primer, so what are we going to do? Yes, we're going to clean again. So what we're normally going to want to do is get it as clean as possible on a table where it's nice and secure, because once you hang it up in the air, it's kind of just, swinging in the air. So we're going to get these all cleaned up. I'm going to give you a couple of helpful handy hints on that for you in just a second. Just give me a minute. Set up. The cleaning process is going to go like this. First, we're just going to get a scratch pad and we're going to lightly go over everything. The reason that we're doing this is because a lot of times you'll get the sanding dust, the primer dust, and it'll kind of get stuck on there, a little tuffet, if you will, so, or a little film. So what you can do is you'll get that off of there and get any dust out of any nooks and crannies, hopefully. And you're just kind of doing one last look over everything to make sure there aren't any hidden scratches or anything like that. You got to be careful when you're vacuuming it up. If you drag any of the plastic on there, that's going to show up. Paint won't stick to that. So do it very light. Now we're going to rag like this here. Actually, this is a relatively specific towel that is for this. And what you want to do is you want to fold it into fours. So we're going to do half like that, and we're going to do another half like this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get, you can actually in this stage just use water, or you can use some wax and grease. Because at this stage, all you're going to be doing is taking off the big chunky monkey dust, if you will, that's on here. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to take this and spray it all on there in a big, thick, like this, right off the bat. And the reason you don't want to do that is because you got all that dust on there. So if you do this, now you go ahead and you try to wipe and clean it up. Basically what you're doing is just taking it and turning it into a mud pie of dust. So you're going to get all of your dust off first, and then you're going to go ahead and soak it down a little bit to make sure that you didn't have any fingerprints on there, what have you. And then we're going to get ready to primer. So it does take a bit of time to get all of this cleaned. So I'm going to need a minute, man. Now when you're setting things up in your spray booth, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you're going with the flow of air. So in other words, here you can see my vents. We're going to get new filters for that here in just a bit. If I were to take my bedsides and my tailgate and I were to put them parallel with all my vents right here, then what would happen is when I would shoot this side, it would get all foggy, everything would build up. Same thing on the other side. So in order to help everything clear out, we'll set everything at a 90-degree angle with our filters. This way, when I'm primering, all of the fumes are going straight into the filters and it's not building up into the air and making your job more difficult. So the theory goes like this: you're sanding and that makes it statically charged. Now it's a particle that is positively charged floating around in the air, just waiting to land on anything you're priming or painting and mess up the job. So what you're going to want to do is put negatively charged water on the ground and on your sides of your spray booth and stuff, because that will attract the positive. And anyway, I don't know if all that's true or not, but I do know that it is best to wet everything down, at least to keep dust down to an absolute minimum. So we've gone ahead and done that. Now we're going to, yes, that's right, clean these again. So lastly, I'm just going to use a tack cloth here, and I'm just going to lightly go over everything and catch any last dust bunnies that might be on there. Now, a lot of people ask me, how many times do we have to do this? And it just depends on how high end of a vehicle that you're doing. If you're just doing a nice, decent daily driver, you can just block sand it once and be done with it. Technically speaking, I could paint this right now, but again, if I did that, more than likely these patches of filler, the little spots of metal, and the little spots of black primer would phantom up on us. It'd be noticeable after the fact. So really what we want to do is when we shoot our color on this, we want this to be one nice sheet of blue all the way down. That's going to keep our top coat color consistent also. We want to make sure that any filler or any imperfections have at least 2 coats or 1 coat of primer on top of it. So we're going to keep block sanding this until we see little baby shiners, okay? But we don't see any large patches of filler. Then we're going to know we're ready to paint. Let's see how many times it's going to take. Shoot a light fall coat on everything, and then I come back and shoot my primer on it. I think this gives me better adhesion, better sticking of my primer on whatever I'm primering. And then I'm going to be shooting things differently, okay? So my inside here, we don't have any large patches of primer. Here I can do 1 or 2 coats that are light and be done with it. On the other side, however, we've got large patches where we have primer sticking through, and this is going to take multiple coats of primer. Now we don't want to shoot it on too thick, we don't want to shoot it on too early. If you put on anything too thick, paint, primer, Bondo, filler, it doesn't make any difference. It's too thick, it will crack. So we're just going to put on a reasonable amount, and then after I get multiple coats on this, then I'll go ahead and I'll get another shot on the inside. Because when I'm primering this side, I'm getting overspray on this. So I'm shooting that up 3 or 4 times. I'm getting overspray on this. I'll get 1 light coat on it. That'll go ahead and tame down any overspray. On tailgates, they're even a little bit more difficult because each individual box right here, every single side, you have to sand every single one of those, and it's a real drag to do that. It takes forever to block sand a tailgate because of all the different little nooks and crannies. So here what I'm going to be doing is I have these areas right here, and I know they need more primer. I know that this area right here needs more primer, but my squares and my rectangulars here, they're nice. So I can go ahead and I can hit this real specific like this. So I don't have to hit every square inch with a thick coat of primer. I can hit just what I need to with what I need to. On my final coat, I'll hit it with all so that it all matches and it's all nice and even and stuff. So give me a little bit of time to go ahead and primer this all stuff up, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. How long you're going to wait for the primer to dry before you put your next coat on is important. If you put it on too soon, the primer that's underneath won't dry, and the solvents and such will get trapped underneath, and it'll basically almost never dry unless you give it a really long time. So you have to let this flash off or dry off for at least 10 or 15 minutes. A good way to check is that anywhere you don't have a money shot on, you can go ahead and touch something like this, you know, or you can touch something like this and you can see if it's still wet or tacky or not. If it's too glossy, like right here, it's still looking a little bit glossy right there. So I'm going to give this just a little bit more time to dry, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get another coat on it, okay? Everything's all primered up. Now when I'm primering, I'm taking a real good look at everything. Like for instance, I've got a little pit right here. And that is because when I'm sanding down and I'm hitting those layers of filler, that layer is going to get sanded down and there might be a little air pocket in there, and that's going to get exposed. So that's another reason why multiple block sands will find those little things. And what we'll do next time is we'll fill all of those in, and we'll sand off any imperfections that we find. We'll fog coat it, yada, 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 yada. So you're going to want to stay tuned, because as good as this looks, next time I'll be block sanding with some 220, and you'll be able to see the defects that are going to be in there regardless, and that would have showed up if we would have painted this a glossy. We're also going to be pulling the cab out, and we're going to be lining up some stuff and double checking it, so, you know, stay tuned.